The VAR Show. The one place for your weekly football update.
Hola, very warm welcome to the VAR show, the show which talks about all the various major football leagues in detail. Today we are going to continue a theme of interviews and we have Bengaluru FC midfielder Mr. Kean Lewis with us. So without wasting much time, I would like to first thank Kean for coming on the show. Thank you and welcome to your show. And I would like to begin by asking you, how are you and what are you doing these days?
Fortunately, me and my family are safe, so we're at home. Season got over for us a little early because we didn't make the final. So we came home just about maybe a week before the lockdown started, and I've been here with my family. Generally, I don't spend more than 2 months with my family because that's as much as off season we get, and the rest of the time I'm usually traveling or I'm doing some volunteer work. I'm never really at home. But I think this is by far now the most time I've spent at home since I've left home in 2008. But we're managing. They've opened the parks and some of the gardens, so I'm at least able to go out and do some individual training and just stay a little bit active more than I was about maybe a month ago.
So how you said that you have never stayed with your family for more than 2 months, for quite a while. So what have you been doing for the past 3-4 months? How have you been spending your time? Must be quite for a lack of a better word, maybe it might be very stressful because being a footballer, you're always out on the field practicing and you are having to stay at home doing nothing. What have you been doing in the past 3-4 months?
I think initially when the lockdown just began, I think we were a bit a little bit excited because we were all at home. So we would play card games, we would play board games. We would do a lot of cooking because I have a little flair for cooking and cuisine and stuff. So we try out new dishes and stuff. But then I think 1 month into the lockdown, we started to get bored of it. So I think that all stopped. And of course, we have the TV and watching movies and all of that continued. But yeah, in terms of activity-wise, I'm not used to sitting still or sitting at home the whole day. Even if it's in the off season, I go to play with my friends. I go to the gym. That's in my time. Besides when I'm not doing any volunteer work or charity work, or if I'm not traveling, I'm always either in the gym because there's nothing to do if you're sitting home. So I'm mostly in the gym, or I'll go down for a run, go down to play with friends. That kind of deal. But with the lockdown, I had to modify a lot of my trainings, and basically for the first 2.5-3 months until they partially lifted it, I was at home doing exercises from YouTube and whatnot apps. Fortunately, I have some of the equipment. I have some weights, I have dumbbells, I have some of the proprioception equipment, resistance band and that kind. So I was able to do a lot of work at home to keep fit and just keep my muscles in shape. But in terms of running, yeah, obviously at home you can't really do any running. It's all stationary running or that kind of deal, and running up and down the stairs. But there's no as such ground running. So that's the only thing I was doing in the meantime. And given my background of coaching, playing, personal training, I have the knowledge even without the videos, without apps. I know certain things and I've been playing. So we've done exercises at home and in the gym, and all of that routines have been given to us by physios or physical trainers, fitness coaches. So, and I am fortunate enough to know people from around the world in these fields. And anytime with a WhatsApp message or a call, they have been kind enough, they've been willing enough to share a routine or say maybe do these exercises. You want to look at this muscle group, or you're looking at recovering from this injury or pain or soreness. These are the things you can do in the meantime. So I think with all of that help, it's kept me busy, in terms of activity, in terms of my fitness and in relation to football. Otherwise, besides that, I personally give a lot of importance to the brain because that's they call it thinking on the field and decision making. So to keep that active, I've been doing some courses. I've been studying online, and just my interest is in sports related stuff. So I've been basically studying nutrition, psychology, sports injury, that kind of uh, aspects in relation to sports.
So like moving on from that topic, and I'll touch upon your topic as a player, as a career till now. And you started from PIFA, and now with a lot of gaps, maybe with Houston Dynamos or maybe with Mohun Bagan, you are now in Bengaluru FC. How has the journey been for you? Did you always expect like you'll reach the top?
I mean, when I started out, I was just when I started out with FIFA, I just went for camps. I was a kid, I was a hyper kid, and keeping me at home was not an option for my parents. And financially, we were struggling at home, or we were trying to, you know, improve our life. And so my parents were usually busy with their work and trying to sort things out. And being the only child, I couldn't stay at home alone. So I would generally be sent for like summer camps and trekking programs and that kind of activities to keep me busy. Football was always my passion, so I ended up mostly being gravitated towards football camps, which is I did many camps over the summer, and FIFA was usually always having camps, which is locally in Mumbai and abroad as well. So I was quite attached with them because they basically took me everywhere for the camps to train, and so I developed a special bond with them, and so that's how the journey began. But at that point, if you ask me, you wouldn't have thought that I would have made it professional. I wasn't, maybe in the right mindset. I wasn't thinking about that, but I was enjoying football, and yeah, somewhere in the back of my head, it was like, yeah, I want to go to the next level. It wasn't specifically listed out because as a kid, I always grew up everybody talking about the EPL. So everyone you asked, if they say where you want to play football, it was, yeah, I want to play in England, I want to play the EPL. But realistically, when I went to Leicester, that's when I came to know what the actual requirements would be to get there, to play there, all of that. And then so I came back, I played, then I went to the US because education was a big part of how I grew up and the background that I come from. So that was one big section about maybe 5 years of my life, playing there, coaching there, studying there. Then obviously that involved playing with my university, playing with teams in Houston, in Mexico for a short period, and then coming back to India with an offer, and that's where then my professional career kicked off, which I had been obviously once I went to US, it was all by then in my mindset to try and make it professionally. First priority was in the US, and then if not, we were always looking to come back and pursue it here as a career.
So like you touched or you said that on your time that when you went to Leicester, you realized what is required to be a top professional in England. But like many of them all around the world would not even have got a chance to go to Leicester for a trial. Like, could you shed some light on the topic? Like, how did it happen?
So it happened through FIFA. FIFA had a lot of contacts and connections in England, in other countries in Europe as well, because they have a lot of camps that they take kids from India and take them there, give them the opportunity to train under coaches from there. So one of the coaches that I trained under was the director of Everton at that time when I went for my camp in Manchester. And they have a system where you have tests and you have skills tests, you have the beep test, you have running, passing, shooting, all the kind of drills. They point you and you have points and there's a system and then you get a report. And it's like basically you go to school and write an exam, which is like an exam on the field, but they're attaching points and a certain system to understand your level of skill. So basically, I had been for about maybe 2 or 3 camps with FIFA, and then I think they also understood that maybe I had better talent than some of the other kids, and so they and my parents, then we had discussed about maybe getting a trial or going abroad, playing somewhere for a short period. and they had a contact who helped get me that trial in Leicester. Basically, it was their post-season for the under 14, and that's how it came about. And that was my first, I would say, trial abroad. I had given trials in India, obviously, but that was my first trial abroad, and uh, I ended up playing with them for about a month and a half. And basically, it was a long enough trial. I was playing with U14s, training with the U16s, living with the U18s and 20s. So I got to see the whole spectrum of their academy program. By the end of the program, obviously, I played about 7 matches, 8 matches in their postseason because it's not like in India where you have pre-season matches and in-season matches. They have post-season matches also to keep their players in shape, to get new players from the city, from other places, and to also, some players have been injured throughout the season, so to get them back to uh, some sort of shape before they have a few months off in the off season. So I played with them. With the U14s, I was the top scorer. At that point, I used to be a striker, believe it or not, because my position changed to a winger when I went to the US. And so with the U14s, I was the top scorer. Um, at the end of the stint, obviously with the U16s, they were a bit bigger than me in size, but I think technically we were on par. And by the end of the trial, when I came back, basically they had offered saying that we'll give you, or we can keep you in the academy. We can keep you through the U14, and we want to see how you develop when you get to the U6, as in when you play for the U16. But one of the criteria for being part of the U16 and under programs is that you have to be living within a certain mile radius of the club. And obviously, me being in India, from India, would mean that I would have to relocate to the UK. And one of the options was considered, but then me being a minor meant that my entire family would have to come with me. And for me, for my family, it was a big decision at that time because I was just 13, and my dad had his own business here. My mom was mostly a homemaker, and then was also assisting my dad with the accounts in the business. Um, and it was a big decision for them to say we're going to drop everything here when they had just started, sorting everything out here, and it was kind of doing okay. To say that we're going to drop everything and then we're going to relocate to a new country where we don't have anybody to help us, we don't have any background in the business. How are we going to sustain ourselves? And that kind of a question was, popping up every time. So then basically it came back, and then I continued to play here because we couldn't relocate from my house here in India.
So definitely. So another topic that you touched upon was a time at the States. So you also have a degree in sports administration from the States. Was it something like you wanted to do, or your parents asked you to complete a certain education level, before getting into football? Like, what was it? Was it a voluntary decision?
I think coming from a very education and academically well-known profile that my family holds, everyone has a degree. Everyone has completed their schooling. There's nobody who's dropped out of school. All my family members, my uncle, my aunt, my cousins, all have studied. All have got a degree. So I think one of the main criteria of continuing to play football when I grew up was keeping my grades. So as long as I could keep my grades and pass my classes, I was allowed to play. So that's how it actually began. But then as I went higher in playing football, like I went to play Mahindra, I went to PIFA, I went to other clubs, did well, played Maharashtra under 16 and all of that. So then the question always was, okay, what after that? How are you going to pursue your education? Are you because they had, I mean, my parents, my dad in specific, had traveled with me around, the different clubs because obviously someone needed to take me to the club. So he had seen the kind of people that come to the clubs, the kind of players, and very few of them were, educationally qualified. Most of them were dropouts. They're coming from, poorer backgrounds, so to speak. which meant that they didn't have enough money and football was not providing enough. So they were playing football and then going to their job, wherever they worked. So there was no time to complete their education, and so that is one of the deals that we made in the house. And basically, even till today, every decision that we make, it's a family decision. We discuss it, we talk about it, whether it has been going to Leicester, going to the US, coming back from the US, signing with whatever club, whether it's been the I League clubs, the ISL clubs, all of that. I think my family plays an important role because uh, they put a lot of time and energy to get me through school, through college, through going to the US and all of that. One of the other aspects that we looked upon when I came back from Leicester was sending me to an academy um, which would provide for my education and also have soccer training or football training. Not too many people know about this, but I also got admitted to an academy in Italy, which is called Ascoli. And when I was about 16, they had sent the letter. I was ready to go, and unfortunately, that time I didn't get a visa. I didn't get a. They rejected my visa, so um, I wasn't able to go to that academy. So again, that's how I came back. And the next stage was, okay, how can we manage to pursue his education and let him play football? So that's when the next uh, advice and the next research we did was about the US, which said their youth program and academy system is very good. Their college level of playing are very good, and you can get your degree that you want. And at that point, I wanted to get a sports degree, which wasn't available anywhere in India. Now it's available in some places, but at that point it wasn't in 2010. So that's when I kind of decided I wanted to go abroad and study, and then I would get to play as well. And then from there, I think the goal was to maybe stay in the US and play somewhere professionally, if that was the priority. And of course, I would have completed my degree, so I would have a bachelor's degree, which I have one in sports management. And then I was free to go and play because I can do my master's at a later date. Maybe when I'm 30 also, that's not a problem because there's no age of learning. But I said for playing, typically your ages are between 20 to 30. So I wanted to maximize on that. And since again over there, when with Houston Dynamo, I wasn't getting a visa to play, I was getting a visa to work. That's when I decided. I said I'll come back and give it a try playing in India and see how that goes.
So, on a personal level, I have seen many players, younger players, who say that education hinders them as a player. Maybe they would have better suited that time into playing. What do you think? How important is education for a development of a player?
I think education is the key, and I'm not saying education in terms of learning what you're learning in school. I'm talking about in terms of keeping your mind active, being able to think fast, making decisions fast, because all that transcends into your ability and talent as a player on the field. Um, if you look at Luka Modric, he's not a very strong or fast or physical player, but because of his ability to think fast, he's able to control the game. And you look at a lot of midfielders who are very skillful and not necessarily fast or strong. They're only technically good and they're fast thinkers. Maybe I could say Andre Pirlo, another guy who's very smart. These guys are really fast thinkers. So I think the brain and decision making uh, in terms of football is very important. And growing up, I think to some extent our education system helps develop the brain, helps you remember, helps you think, because it's imposing challenges and problems to you, which means you have to use your own brain to think. The guys who are not going to school are obviously not being faced with these challenges mentally. So they don't know how to develop, and their development comes from different means, and which may not be required at that age. Because I had friends who were 15, 16, who were fishermen, who were farmers. So their problems are say pertaining to the crop, pertaining to the weather, pertaining to some of the equipment. So they're not, I mean, the development of the brain is at different stages, and age specific development is very important in terms of sports or in terms of life also. So you can't that's why you have like age categories for driving, you have age categories for watching certain films, because after that age, your brain is developed enough to comprehend what is happening, to be able to discern what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong. So I think that's how important the education system is. I don't necessarily agree with the education system in India because it has to do a lot with things that we're probably not going to use in the future and a lot of rote learning. So in that aspect, in terms of syllabus, I am not maybe in favor of what we learn so much, but in terms of studying and going to school, yes, that is very important. And even today, with my academy that I have a small academy in my city. I encourage all of them to be studying, to not give up their education, to make sure at least they have completed their 12th and they are able to play football. I think that is only time management, a lot to do with time management, to be able to say I can manage my education, go to school, and manage football. Because I think a lot of kids now, what they do is they go to school, they have school from whatever, say 7 to 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then they want to go for tuition. So why not, whatever advice and suggestions I give, I said, why not you just pay attention in school? You're going to learn the same subject if you're going for tuition. So cut off on your tuition time and use that tuition time to train. And your individual technicality can come from training individually. And when you need to go and train with the team, you have to do a little bit of travel. And I think that's where there's a little problem in my country because we spend a lot of time traveling. But as a kid, I didn't have a club in my city and I had to travel 45 minutes to the nearest club, which was Mahindra at that time. But I negotiated with my school. They were lenient enough. They spoke to my parents. They spoke to me. We agreed on certain terms and conditions about when I can go, what grades I have to maintain and all of that. And I was allowed to go. So I think it's just being able to find the sweet spot where you can, manage your education, your school, your extracurricular hours, your sports, your family life, all of that, and then go forward. Because I think a huge part of being an athlete is discipline, and you have to inculcate that and develop it from a young age, which begins in school.
So, going back to your time at States, you spent quite some time in Houston Dynamos where you played with and against a lot of great players. How was it, being in that environment?
Then I played for Dynamo for 2 seasons. My first season was really good. Unfortunately, I had an injury during the trial period itself. But when I came back, I played all the games. The coach was a very nice guy from the UK. He liked the way I play. I played all the games for him. And then I continued to play throughout the year where I was working as well. And then they offered me a position with their coaching staff for the youth program. So I coached with them for about 6 months with their youth program, with the summer camps, with the residential camps, all of that. And I think it was a really great experience. There was also training sessions where we could watch the senior team play. We could mingle with them in the locker rooms, in the indoor gyms. They would come and some days play with us. Some of the players could go and play there when they had injuries and they required players in certain positions. My second year, we had a different coach, and I wasn't getting that much playing time because he was a French coach. He had taught some of his players, and that's when I transitioned out to another team in Houston, which is owned by an Indian called Laredo Heat. And basically, I went from Dynamo there for the rest of their season. Played about 6-7 games. They had about 6-7 games left in the season. Actually, they had maybe 8 or 9 games. I played 6 or 7, and then I got the call to come to India for a trial. So they were not qualifying in that season for the playoffs. So the Indian owner was very happy, and he said, "You can go and give your trial there." But the whole experience of Houston Dynamo was, my first encounter with a professional team in the US, because obviously before that I had played with my university team, which is, yeah, it's good, but it's a college system. It's not the MLS system. So playing with Dynamo, coaching with them, I basically got a very um, inside the company kind of a look into uh, how they run the MLS and how the players train and what is the style and all of that. So I think it was a huge learning experience for me, and it was a great experience with them as well.
So of course, so after you came from Houston Dynamos and you played for a lot of clubs in India, first being I think Mohun Bagan. So was it although you played in India before, was it like a shock, coming down from maybe Houston Dynamos where maybe the facilities and the infrastructure was very high and maybe even the professionalism? How was it coming down to India?
Yeah, obviously it was very different. I mean, I would say even in colleges they have the same setup that I League and ISL teams have, which is a gym, separate gym for the athletes. Each sport has their own ground, which means if you don't have a ground, you're not allowed to have the sport. So if the university doesn't have a soccer ground, they can't have a soccer team. So the infrastructure is there. I mean, some of the ISL and I League teams don't even have their own ground. But I think we face a problem with space in India, and a lot of population, maintenance of the ground and all of that are certain aspects that have to be considered. So being with Dynamo obviously was a level up in terms of professionalism, in terms of the facilities they had. Um Coming to India, like I said, my first priority was to stay in the US and play there. But unfortunately, that didn't work out for me, which is when I decided to come to India and I wanted to play professional. So my next best option was to come to India at that point, because I had tried going to Mexico and playing. Unfortunately, again, the club that I tried out for, it shut down. So they couldn't send me any paperwork, because for me, being an international in any other country requires paperwork, which is the toughest part of a job. So I came back, and I think I actually came to Bengaluru first for a trial through my agent at the time. Actually, was the coach, and at that moment they were not looking for players in my position. Now, obviously, I went to the US as a striker, got converted to a winger, so I came back as a winger, and they were not looking for those kind of positions at that moment. So then. And the team was, I think, in off season, so they had not begun their pre-season yet. But Mohun Bagan was in season, and they were training for the CFL. So fortunately, I got a trial with them, and somehow, before I was supposed to come back, because Bengaluru said, we're not in season now, but since you come, we'll give you a tryout maybe after 2-3 weeks when the team comes back for pre-season. So I didn't know what to do for those 2-3 weeks. So I ended up going to Calcutta, and Mohun Bagan was having CFL training going on, and I happened to train. And before I could go back to Bengaluru for the trial, they offered me a contract. So I didn't want to risk going to Bengaluru at that point, because I didn't have a contract in hand, and it would be another trial in Bangalore. So I went ahead and signed with them. Of course, they have a big legacy, huge fan base. So I think all of that was a big help. It gave me the feeling like, I'm playing for a big club. And obviously the derby games are huge in Calcutta. The craze is really nice. I mean, Mohun Bagan at that time and for the next 2-3 years had a top-notch team with half of the players from the national team. So it was a great experience, because I got to see players coming from the national team. I got to see and play with players from the ISL clubs, because at that time the ISL I League was going on simultaneously. Not simultaneously, at separate periods. So I got to see both sides of Indian football in my first 2 seasons at Mohun Bagan, and it was a very great experience for me to play in Calcutta.
So like talking of Mohun Bagan, the temperature and of in Calcutta especially, it can be very high, during the summers, and generally in India it's a very humid environment. Okay, and this question was sent in by Mohul Mishra. Okay, so he asks us that why does not India have like water breaks like how you have in the Premier League now? Because India maybe players require it more than maybe in England, where the temperature is not that high compared to what it is here. So what do you think? Like, should it be introduced?
Uh, I don't know if it could be introduced or it should be. I think now the FIFA rule is if it's above, I think 32. I'm not sure, but I think if it's above a certain temperature, maybe 32 or 35, you have to have a water break between the half. But in terms of enforcing it in India, I don't know because majority of the Indians we've grown up in this weather, so we're kind of used to it. And entire pre-season, entire the league season goes on in kind of a similar weather. So we're kind of habituated to it. And yeah, whenever the ball goes out and there's a free kick or there's an injury, uh, we always go to the touchline or you can see bottles on the sideline or behind the goalpost and you can go and have a drink. So uh, I don't find it so necessary, but I mean that's an option that could be considered because in terms of fatalities, we've not had any, heat problems or dehydrations, or, in that aspect. So, which is why maybe probably they're not enforced here still and not such a compulsive rule or, they're not pushing for that rule.
So like moving on from that question, and you have played in quite a lot of states in India, like be it West Bengal, or be it Bangalore. So how different is it, like playing for someone like maybe Mohun Bagan in Calcutta to Bangalore in Bangalore? How different is the fan culture and everything?
I think it's very different because I mean the cities are different, the fan base and the sports culture in each city is different depending on where they are playing, how old the club is. You have to realize that Mohun East Bengal, Calcutta clubs are over 50, 60 years old, maybe more than that. So they have a long legacy coming through the years and they've grown in their fan base. Uh, More so with the I League teams, with some of the ISL teams. Uh, like I played with Delhi, I played with Pune. They just emerged for the ISL, so they didn't have such a huge fan base, and so many years to develop that. So with Bangalore, I feel the culture was different because they're a team with a lot of recognition and in terms of accolades, one of the most accomplished teams in the league in India. Having initiated about 6 years ago, you've had 6 years and six trophies. Whichever league, whichever year they played, they have a trophy in that season. Um, so in terms of that, they've developed a winning culture and a winning fan base in terms of the people who come. Also, you have to look at aspects as to what kind of city environment is created. Delhi is more like a political city. Bangalore is more like a IT hub. Um, Mumbai is a fast-paced, traffic, noisy city. Um, Calcutta, Kerala, places where they will travel and they are passionate for football. So all those aspects kind of um, develop or determine your fan base and the people who support you, the craze for football, the devotion and the dedication of the people who are uh, in the city.
So continue with the similar theme, like you have played with Mohun Bagan in the I League and with other teams in ISL. So, in your experience or opinion, what is the major difference between the two? That is the ISL and the I League, and which one do you personally prefer or enjoyed playing?
I think there are a lot of differences. I mean, because the setup is different, the organization managing it is different, um, the financial power is different. Because typically I League clubs are owned by um, individuals and people putting their own money in. The I League clubs, the ISL clubs are owned by big companies like Tata, Muthoot Finance, JSW. So they're bigger entities. They have um, bigger brands, and which is why they're able to develop sponsors and uh, get pull in more money plus the structure of and the rules of the league, which is the I League. Say the budget is lower, the ISL the budgets are higher. In terms of infrastructure of the clubs, depending on their financial powers, they have more facilities, like they'll have a gym, they'll be able to get foreign coaches, they'll have different sort of apartment arrangements for the players. So I think these all determine, how the league is. And obviously with the ISL, IMG has made a structure where there are certain criteria you have to fulfill to qualify, you have to meet certain requirements to be an ISL club. So that is all the standard has been set. And the I League, the standard is a little different, in terms of what your budget is, in terms of where your coaches come from, what have they to be accomplished, what have your players, how many you can sign, how are they supposed to be put up, what are the games going to be like, how long should it be, all of that. So all of those things, determine how the league does, and basically those are the differences between the leagues.
So staying with ISL, you currently play for Bengaluru FC, and you have won the title. So I think in 2018-19. How is how is it playing for Bengaluru, and how is Bangalore as a city for you?
Unfortunately, my contract ran out with the Bangalore, so I'm not with Bangalore anymore. As in yet, I don't have a team as of now. We're still in search of a new team. But my 2 years at Bangalore were amazing, and the season we won obviously was my first season with Bangalore. Their second season in the ISL, the structure and their system is very good. It's the best I've seen in India so far. The people in the club are very supportive. The management are ready to help you no matter what. You're not being pushed or not being pressurized for anything. I think a lot of the players like that. The culture is a bit more relaxed, and there's no pressure. We're all playing well. The club is doing well, and they've been doing well for the last few years. They've been in the Indian system, and I think I enjoyed that. One of the reasons I renewed my contract for another year was because I like the city a lot. I like food and cuisine and going out a little bit. So Bangalore, I think, was a hub for a lot of different restaurants and a lot of different cuisines from all over the country and all over the globe as well. So I had some great friendships with some of the foreign guys and the Indian guys, who were going to be there for the next season, and which is why I ended up, staying another year with BFC. Of course, apart from the reason that playing was important, and the.
So yeah, so definitely. So touching on the topic of food, which was your favorite restaurant in Bangalore?
My favorite restaurant in Bangalore would be Burma. The first time I actually got introduced to one of my friends from Australia who was on the team, Eric. He took me over there, and I absolutely love the food. It's a vegan, vegetarian restaurant, and there's no non-veg. And I often, whenever I go to any team or whenever I go anywhere, I try and find the person who is most adventurous in terms of food. And so usually with the foreigners it would be Eric, and with the Indians it would be Rahul, who was my roommate. Basically, we were sharing the flatmate. So we would always end up trying new places and going and eating food. And out of all the places I've tried, I think Burma was my favorite place, where I happened to take other people and go afterwards as well.
So staying with that, suppose Burma was your favorite place, but suppose you had a team win and you had to celebrate, where would you all go other than ABC?
Team win, usually because we are close to the stadium and because we are close to UB City, generally a few of us would end up going to UB City, and it would be one of the the restaurants there, which would be the Sanchez or um, Farsi Cafe or something like that, which was on the top floor of the rooftop. Um, uh, but as such, the whole team would not go out together because some of them had their family with them, some of them had their kids. Uh, the foreign players, some of them had their rituals and going to their restaurants after the win. Some of them went home. Uh, some of the players who didn't play usually would have training the next day, so they would rush home to eat and go to bed because the next day we would have training. So it differed depending on preferences and players and who was there and the result and all of that.
So again, I'll touch on the topic that you have played in many states and you have stayed in many cities. Like playing for teams. Where did you like staying the most? Which city did you enjoy?
For me, Bangalore I enjoyed most because I enjoyed cooler weather, and I think majority of the year Bangalore is cool. In the evenings, I don't think I had to use the AC anytime in Bangalore except I think for a month or a month and a half in the summer. But the rest of the time, it's good weather. I think the fans are really good. The entire culture of the city, the places to eat, the team, of course, um, and me having a few family relatives over there. I think all of them was, really made the entire experience of playing there and staying there a lot more memorable than probably the other cities because Delhi, I didn't know anyone. Calcutta, I didn't really know anyone. Pune, the only advantage was it was really close to my house. So I could maybe any time if there were functions at home or if it was a day or two off, I would come back home. Of course, with cities further away from my home, I couldn't do that. But I personally, in season or otherwise, also prefer staying away from home. Uh, but yeah, so Bangalore was my favorite city where I played and stayed so far.
So like moving back to football, and as you said, you are currently unattached to any club. So do you have aspirations to maybe go out and play maybe in a different country?
I definitely had that, but majority of the countries want younger players who typically want to be under 22. Obviously, me being older, there's kind of lesser of a chance. Um, in terms of wanting, if I want to, yes, definitely I want to go and play. Well, if I'm going to play, I'm not looking at the salary part. I'm looking more at living in that country, playing there. What is the experience? What is the culture like? Um, so if I end up going to another team in another country, it's not going to be because I'm going there for the money. It's going to be because it's a different experience. And like I told you, like traveling, culture, food is something that I like doing. And I think to a huge extent, football in some way has enabled me to do that as well. So yeah, I would love to play and go to another country, but that depends on the availability, the options, because just as India has a foreign quota and a limit on number of foreigners you can have, all other European countries or say Asian countries have the same criteria. So depending on the league, they have 3+1 rule or a 5 foreigner rule, which means I come under that foreign category. So it becomes all the more tougher to go and play for a team abroad.
So the next question is more little bit more hypothetical, and if you had to choose one player, like from the full history of football with whom you would want to play, who would that player be?
You mean someone I have played with and who would I want to play with again, or just anybody?
Just anyone.
I would say probably Messi and Steven Gerrard. Steven Gerrard is my favorite player. So I grew up watching him play, and obviously not my position, but over the years in Bangalore also I have played that position. So I grew up playing and watching Liverpool and Steven Gerrard. So one of my favorite players is Steven Gerrard, and I would love to play with him. The other player whom I would say I probably just missed playing with would be Messi. Just a few days before the Argentinian team came to Houston and trained on the Houston Dynamo field with my team with the academy players. I had just left to come to India for trials, and I was at when they came, which was probably just a week after I came to India. I was at Mohun Bagan, and the Argentinian team came to train at Houston Dynamo, and all my other friends, got a picture with him, got to train. I mean, a picture is okay, but training with him is a different experience. So they all got the opportunity to train, and from that squad, I was the only one who had come here to play professionally. So that is another player who I would say I want to train and play with, and I probably just missed that opportunity by a week or so.
So, like, since you're a Liverpool fan, I guess, because you're a Steven Gerrard fan, how happy were you when Liverpool won the league?
I mean, see, to be honest, I'm okay. I'm not so high about it because for me, there's no personal attachment with the team. I mean, we just watch it on TV. We like the team. I mean, some people just like it because it's a good club. I particularly like teams because of the game they play, the style they play, and particular players. Uh, in terms of attachment with the club, I have no attachment because uh, no, I've not played for Liverpool. I don't live in Liverpool. I don't know any people from Liverpool. So in that terms, um, so for me to be excited was nothing like extraordinary. Or winning the league, I was happy. Like, yeah, the team I support wins, but uh, I'm not really attached emotionally to the team. The only team probably I would be a bit connected with is Leicester because uh, I have history there. I have played with them. I know some of the players. I know some of the people in the management. I've seen their facility. I've stayed with some of the youth program people, worked and traveled with them. So that is the attachment I would have. So, I feel a little connection in that perspective. But so for me, in terms of emotional attachment with any club, I would say the closest club that comes in the EPL would be Leicester. But otherwise, I mean, yeah, I'm happy, but that's about it. Like, I'm not going overboard with celebrating or going a party or going out to eat or whatever.
So, but unlike you, there will be many other Liverpool fans who will be, like, overboard and they'll be rejoicing. And, since you have played and you have been involved in the game, realistically, when can we see maybe Indian teams being followed that way in India?
I think I can't say how long it will be, but it all depends on how they are promoting the sport, how the culture is being, uh, developed, how they're doing the marketing of the sport. Because if you see, cricket is doing really well, and cricket is played by what 15 countries, and football is played by over 200 countries in the world, and it's the most watched sport in the world. But if they use the same module, if they put in the same marketing and the same um, money power into football as much as they do into the IPL and cricket and all of that, I think football can do as well as cricket. Why not? But it is changing that mentality and uh, you know being able to promote the sport in a way where people are willing to spend money to come, willing to buy jerseys, willing to support the players. I think that is something that has to develop as a culture. And you know, cricket, there are millions of people who don't play cricket, but they still support our national team. They still go to pay ₹1,000 or $2,000 to go see an IPL game. So why can't we do that for football? It's finding the fan base, developing the fan base. Everything is not necessarily related to how well the national team does, because you have to also understand that football is played by many more countries and cricket not so many, which is why we are always in the top three, top four. But there is more competitiveness in football. We are far behind in terms of where our system and infrastructure and nurturing for young athletes are in the football area. So those are all perspectives that we have to keep in mind. When we are trying to uh, achieve, the craze that cricket in India has developed.
So, again, on a personal level, are you a superstitious person? Like, do you have certain pre-match rituals or order that you follow?
To be honest, no, I was never a superstitious person, but I never developed anything before games or after games. And I know that most of these superstitions come from, they have these sayings where all of this, if you do this, you will win, or today I did this, so we won, all of that. But I think that's more to do with the mind. If you think about it before the game, uh, that it's going to work, it's going to work. And sometimes what happens is after the game, somebody tells you, oh, today you tied your right shoe before you tied your left. And that is why we lost. But so the next game, it's only that thing that plays on your mind, which actually is going to affect your, thinking ability, the performance or whatever. But what is destined to be, the result is not going to change by you doing something a different way. You know, I mean, in terms of superstition. Yeah, you can maybe change your tactics, change your training, all of that. That is, yeah, changing the game result. But what is destined to be is not going to be changed by superstition. So I personally don't have any.
So, in terms of a person related to football, which person has had the most influence, in you as a player?
I think personally, a lot of people have had an influence because, like my career, I've traveled from city to city, from state to state, been in different clubs, which meant different coaches, different training styles, different management, different people who have, had advice, who have supported me or given criticism, which has all helped shape and mold me in some form. I wouldn't say there's one person, but the constant people that I always have is my family. My parents have always supported me right from the age of 13 when I wanted to go and play football in clubs or camps or wherever. Um, they've always supported me. They've picked out times, picked out opportunities, for me to be able to go, train, play, um, avail of any facilities. And so they've always helped me and they've always had an influence. Like I told you, we as a family sit and discuss and, decide whether it is a decision for me, is a decision for them, decision to go on vacation, travel, food, anything. So I think they have a lot of influence in what I do and the decisions I make, and the support I think which has been constant is always coming from my family.
So, moving back to your footballing career, do you feel disappointed that you have not been recognized in terms of national caps?
I think yeah, every player in India, I think their dream is to play for their country, and that is the same dream I have. I wanted to play for my country ever since I've grown up. I was in the under 16 national camp uh, in Goa, but after that I went abroad, so I wasn't in the Indian football team, and I was never called up for the national team. So um, the work still continues. Hopefully, my dream to play at least one game for the national team, uh, that dream comes true. So I have different dreams, and they're at different levels. Uh, it's like a business plan where I have priorities of how to go about it and what to do and which one I want to achieve. And certain dreams I've had, certain dreams like if you had asked me about 6 years ago, my dream was to play in the US because I was in the US in the MLS. Now, I think that dream I have had to sacrifice and compromise on. So Now, being in India, the more realistic dream is to play for um, the national team, and uh, that obviously is going to come through playing well in the ISL. So now the next step, that step for the last few years has been to do well in the ISL.
So, like as a footballer, what is your biggest fear?
Uh, I think to have uh, no fear would be the best option and best solution. But in terms of a sports career, I would say all athletes to some extent, have a little fear about injury because it can inhibit you from playing, maybe a few more years. Another fear is, the future, the career after football. What are you going to do? How are you going to work? How many years you have in in the tank left, because you may have 2 years, 3 years. You can't predict. Unforeseen things may happen. You may not get picked by a club. The club shut down. Injury. Maybe you have a family issue. Maybe you have to take up a family business, a job, which is more secure. So all those things, are always a little worry. I would say I wouldn't put it as fear, but it's a worry. Like if you ask, my current worry is which club am I going to get into? Am I going to get a club? That is my current worry. So yeah, that's in terms of worry, but they're not in terms of fears where I am afraid of it, or uh, it's going to prohibit me from doing something.
So definitely. So, in terms of you as a player, and like finding a club, what will you, or what do you look at, before joining a club?
To be honest, if I have many offers from clubs, then the ball is in my court, and then I have a chance to, decide which club I want. If you don't have a choice, if there is no option, then obviously uh, it's better to go with the club that you have an offer from. But I think in terms of deciding um, what or which club you will go to, I think is the finance part, which is your salary. The city, I would say, decides a little bit for me which city I'm going to. A huge and major portion of the deciding factor is whether you're going to get to play or not. So uh, if you're not going to get to play, I mean, every player wants to play in the club. They want to be in the first 11. So if I'm not going to play, then is it a worthwhile option to go into that club? Also, the culture and the style of play of the coach and the club, whether it suits you, whether it's a style you'll fit into. I think these are the things where uh, I, as a player, or I would say my colleagues as players, would probably analyze. Obviously, this is given an ideal situation where you have an option of maybe two or three clubs you can pick and choose from.
So definitely. So suppose tomorrow you are ending your career, you are maybe 35, 36, you're ending a career tomorrow. How would you want to be remembered as?
I would say the ideal remembrance is we can give anyone is for the playing career they've had. And I think if you ask me, I would say Sunil Chhetribai has had the best career in terms of playing, and the way he's going to be remembered. Obviously, he's not retired, but we keep joking around with him. But the way he's going to be remembered is how everyone wants to be remembered. Like every player has that, same amount of respect, uh, awards and accolades, and being one of the best players in the country. The respect and the recognition you get from the city, from your comrades, from the management, and the kind of value that you have is being recognized.
So on a personal level, do you plan into getting into coaching side of the game?
To be honest, in the US, I've already had a year of experience of coaching. I would say more than a year of experience in coaching. I got my coaching licenses in the US when I was studying. That helped me a lot, like I said, to work with the Dynamo youth program, to work with a couple of more academies in the US in Houston. Um, so yeah, I definitely look an option um, for coaching. Um, like I told you, I have a small academy in my city as well, which involves me managing and coaching the academy in the off season. Um, but at a higher level, yes, obviously I want to go and coach senior teams, academy teams, and keep growing. And I'm also open to going abroad and coaching. So I think in terms of that pathway, I have to first look at getting my licenses here and being able to then weigh my options after I have certain qualifications.
So, like till now, if you had to choose one standout moment from your career, which one would that be?
Uh, I don't have any one standout moment as such, but I think usually players speak about goals and the one most memorable match they had or something. For me, it would be I think my season with Delhi. It's not a moment, but I think for me, every moment playing with Florent Malouda and playing for Zambrota, I think those were memorable games every time I stepped on the pitch. And, I think that was the time when I probably excelled most as a player.
So, like on that note, Keen, I'll ask you one final question, and this will be even more difficult than your choice to whether to go to Leicester City or not. So, if you had to choose one of the two players, whom would you choose? Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo?
Uh, for me, it's not a difficult question because, yeah, I like Cristiano. I like how he plays. All of that. He's a good player. But for me, I prefer Messi because it relates more to me. I'm a shorter player. I'm uh, a more technical player, and I'm more a player with finesse in my goal scoring prowess. So in terms of Cristiano, he has a lot of power. He has a lot of pace. Obviously, yeah, technically he's good, but I can relate more to Messi because typically, if you look at Messi's goals, it's all about placement, it's finishing. Uh, there's no, I mean, yeah, he scores shooting goals as well, but that's the kind of player like I'm more gravitated towards.
So, on that note, Keen, thank you so much for talking to me, and I wish you all the best for your future with the future club, whichever, wherever that is, and wish you win all the possible trophies there, and hope we can talk again soon. Thank you, take care, and bye.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.